Alrighty. So let's just jump right into the nuts and bolts of why we're here. We all know the National Association of Realtors got sued. That's not new. We've also gone through some of these form classes already, but up until this point, they've all been kind of, I don't want to say hypothetical, but it was kind of things that we thought were coming. Now we actually have some concrete changes. So I thought now's a good time to circle back around and just start nailing this stuff down. So you all have a packet in front of you. It kind of goes through what's going to change. Maris will remove all current and historical compensation and commission fields from the MLS by August 1st. So there will, as we know, there will no longer be any sort of commission in the MLS. Maris will actively prevent brokers and agents from making or disclosing offers of compensation in the MLS starting on August 1st, which means you can no longer put it in the MLS in any way of, hey, the payout is 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever that might be. Maris will require buyers agents to have a signed buyer agreement prior to showing any property by August 17th of 2024. This is going to get a little muddy, and we'll actually kind of go into that just a little bit later, because I think this is going to cause a lot of confusion in our industry, a lot. What does settlement mean for us? What we must do. We must require that all MLS participants working with a buyer enter into a written agreement before the buyer tours a home. We must require that all MLS participants specify and conspicuously display the compensation and how it will be determined. We must ensure that the participant does not receive compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to upon the buyer. You cannot represent your services as free unless you truly receive no compensation. I know that in the past, this was always kind of a gray area. We used to kind of do that. Hey, it's free to work with us. So there's no charge. It was always kind of a gray area. Now you can't. You simply have to take off all your advertising. Hey, using a buyer's agent is free. You just can't do it no more. You must disclose to prospective sellers in conspicuous language that your commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. Okay, on a side note, I kind of think this is pissy. I don't think we should have to do that, but we agreed to it in a settlement, so we do.
What was that?
You must disclose to prospective seller in conspicuous language that your commissions are not set by law and fully negotiable. I don't know one other industry that you walk into and they say, oh, by the way, I'm going to give you my price, but it's negotiable.
OBO.
Yeah. I mean,
isn't that what we've always done?
Well, we have to say, and you'll see in our forms, it actually states in there that these commissions are not set by law and they're fully negotiable, which again, I think is kind of a crock. Last time I went and got my car worked on. The guy said, okay, it's going to be $600 to get this fixed. He didn't say, oh, but by the way, that's a negotiable number.
But I don't think we go in saying that. It's just written down if they read it.
Right. Well, correct. And now it has to be part of our forms. So again, in our listing agreement and our agreement with buyers also. And now this is kind of a big one. You must not filter or restrict listings communicated to customers or clients based on the existence or level of compensation offered to the buyer broker or other buyer representative.
How would you do that if you don't know what the compensation is?
Right.
Well, that's a good point. But and while this might sound like it's a big deal, man, for the last, how many years? 4, 5, 6, 8 years? Have you really had that much control over what your buyers wanted to see? I mean, don't your buyers kind of call you now and say, hey, I want to look at this house? Because if you don't send it to them, they're going to find it on Zillow. So it was really, while it looks like it's a big deal, I don't really think it's that big of a deal. Yes?
So we're going to show 5 houses. We have to call those 5 listing agents and say, hey, are you cooperating? Are you going to pay me if I bring you a contract?
Yes.
That's what's going to happen.
And
And that's a verbal conversation?
I'll show you that in the
Okay.
our forms. Yeah, how that's going to transpire and how I think that's going to transpire.
What'd you say, Nathan?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Didn't you say that, you thought they were gonna put a thing on there, on the MLS? I haven't seen that in all this paperwork that says,
It may or may not. I don't know yet. Okay, I'll jump ahead. What Maria's referring to is part of the settlement. We cannot offer commission to another agent, which means that was what our whole MLS was all built around, the unilateral offer of compensation. You could look in Marist and go, okay, this one's paying 3%, and you knew right off the bat. Now that's not the case anymore. But the agreement specifically allows us to advertise sellers' concessions. So think about that for a second. You cannot offer a buyer agent commission, but you can offer a 3% seller concession and put it in the MLS.
So who determines how that concession is used?
Well, and this is what's going to be interesting because Marist so far has been kind of tight-lipped on how this whole thing is going to transpire. Because I don't think they really know. Now, unfortunately, I think they're going to swing way to the conservative side, which is going to eventually have to work its way out. And that's kind of what I'll get into here in a minute of my predictions of what I think is going to happen. So, these changes are meant to be adopted and not a workaround. You don't think we're going to work around this? Using semi-private or private websites, social media platforms, or venues other than the listing broker's own and controlled website to continue to make the offers of cooperative compensation would be in violation of the NAR settlement and would instantly void your broker's coverage under the settlements of the terms. So what they're already telling you here is the one place we're going to advertise it is on our individual websites. Yes.
So when it says private, semi-private or private websites, there's companies already being created, and your address and your listing and what the compensation is.
That might be
But
doable.
That's a website that
It's-
anybody can go to, so that considered private.
I would.
It's
This
widely
is-
advertised to all the
yeah.
agents in the nation.
This is what we're working around right now. Yeah, this is what we're working around right now because the first thing everyone thought of is, oh, well, I'll just go ahead and put it in showing times in showing notes, and then some of the experts came out with, nope, can't do that because it's still controlled by the association. So pretty much anything the association has their hands into, we can't advertise on a commission wise. Now, anything they don't have their hands on, it's kind of up for grabs. All right, what else? What's next? Oh, let me jump out of this one because I have it.
Mark, what would happen if you had both sides, like if you're a listing agent and then they say, hey, buy this, what form are you gonna use for that?
That's going to be interesting because this is where I think a lot of agents, and I'm probably going to cover it again, but I'll bring it up because this is going to be a big deal. I've read some people online say things like, okay, I'm sitting in an open house. Person walks in, I have to have them sign a buyer agency agreement before I show them the house. I don't believe that to be the case. Because remember, none of the lawsuit affects state law. So we still got state law. And quite honestly, I'm more worried about the MREC than I am about the lawsuit. So we still can default back to, remember like in real estate school, where you had the difference between a customer and a client? Well, just because someone walks in the front door does not necessarily make them a client. It doesn't necessarily establish a buyer's agency relationship. They're still your customer. And you'll see in here in the forms how that gets addressed with the seller side. So
say that's covered in the list, the new listing.
yeah. Interesting. So actually, this was the email version of what you got. These are some changes coming. Changes, renaming withheld to office exclusive. That's going to fix our problems. On June 18th, that changed, or was going to.
They say that's just to do between withheld and withdrawn.
And, you know, I have to admit, of all the things they mess up, this statement here is the most. No, it's the most upfront they've ever had. Withheld and withdrawal status will clarify the intent and use of this status, because so many times we get phone calls from someone going, "So now, what happens if I put it in withdrawn, or what happens if it's off market, or?" And we just went on all these different, and it was so confusing.
Was held before the listing.
Yeah.
But you're smart, you can figure that out.
So if we're doing office exclusive, then instead, do we still need a seller to sign a what's it called, form that they have?
Yeah, so they have a new one coming out.
Oh, they have a new form
It's
coming
not
out
out
to
yet.
keep it all in less basically. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So whenever that switches over, right?
Yes.
Before June 18th, if we have a listing with the withheld form, do we have to sign a new one?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
No. No. All right. How will it change your experience? The update will not cause any change to your process within Matrix. It will help to correct the continued confusion, because Lord knows we've all had confusion. It's not to be viewed an on-market option. All right.
It was incoming versus incomplete.
Yeah,
See that?
yeah. Yes, it did. Yeah, they're changing the name incoming to incomplete listing. You know what? It kind of does. You know what? If you think about it, that's actually another smart move, because incoming could also be held as a coming soon.
I do have a question about that.
Sure.
I know it doesn't say anything about the timeline requirements on that, but like, I know I got a slap on the wrist because I had an incoming listing that wasn't complete because I was waiting for the seller. So is there still like a set amount of time that you're allowed to have something incomplete?
There never was, I don't think.
Yeah, was
She got, she they slapped her.
Yeah, I got slapped on
We've
the
had
Really?
it in there for like a year.
Yeah, no, it was recent. Like, she had it in there for,
It was like 3 days.
yeah, and they do.
That was it?
And, yeah, they went and deleted it.
I had them.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It just
I don't know if it's something new, I don't know if it's weird.
Because then you should be advertising whatsoever, even like your office.
I don't think we can see each other's incoming, can we?
No, it goes into.
Well, they can, right? Yeah.
That was weird.
Some of that-
Sitting at incoming for too long, and then they were like, nope, you can't do that, it needs to go.
What does it matter? Nobody
Yeah.
sees it.
Well,
Yeah.
that's actually what we're sharing on.
well, some of that is, in my opinion, Maris's rule change of the month. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Someone stumbled across it.
it's kind of frustrating. Yeah,
It's by the, yeah, also
yeah, yeah. By the least of our worries.
by the higher risk slap
Yeah.
They're changing the terminology of master bedroom to primary bedroom.
again.
It's going to change in the fireplace locations and bedroom description field. Master bathroom will be upgraded to primary bathroom. It's kind of weird because in my house, that's kind of the least primary bathroom. I just thought about that. I'm like, well, anyway. Yeah, yeah. They should change that to Dad's bathroom. Sorry. Yeah. All right. Comp only listings credit update on June 27th. Maris will update the comp only listing process as described below. This will verify production numbers and brokerage attribution more accurately within the system. On how it will change your experience, comp only listings will be entered as incomplete within the listing agent ID Z member, which is the default ID. It's not a Maris agent.
The comp only listings weren't like identified as comp only prior, so is that a way that it can be?
I don't know. Why?
This is for people who they sell an off-market properties, but they want the credit and they want the comp in the MLS. And even new construction, we're finding don't put them in there. So you can go in here and you can enter it as you put it as an incomplete, and then you have to put the IDs as a Z member. Then you have to email them.
Okay.
This is email.
That makes
them
sense. I see it now.
listing changes at Maris, and then they will proceed to give you credit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
My question, and I get that, but my question is, in an appraisal situation, isn't it possible that an appraiser could be discriminatory towards how they appraise a property, just if they're identified as comp only? You know
No,
what I'm saying?
I wouldn't think so.
It does kind of hold a different weight than something that's on the market, that something is desirable by the.
Well, now people put in the notes for comp purposes only.
That's true.
So that's already.
Yeah, I wouldn't really think that that have a big factor. No, I mean,
You guys have the listing. That one.
but that pretty much on the buyer side.
Like, why wouldn't it be an agent on the other side? I don't. So why
True.
wouldn't it be on a listing yet?
That's an interesting concept because what happens? Yeah, if you had a listing.
When I do those, I can do, because I've done several, I do this authorization to show.
Yeah.
And you have to have some either an authorization to show or a listing. And then
So
I
also
when
show
I
you
put it
to
in the
look
MLS, just as if, so by Sunday I sold it and it's for comp purposes only.
Yeah.
If somebody construction, they won't give you that authorization to show.
I don't know, you could do that just on my side.
No, it's interesting. Huh. All right. Removal of commission fields. All right. How will it change your experience? Due to the NAR settlement, all commission fields in the MLS, including historical data, will no longer be available as of 8/1/24. The settlement terms provide the MLS until September 16th to enact these changes. Maris is making these updates before the deadline to ensure any issues will be able to be corrected between August and that deadline. So there will no longer be a commission field. Just kind of interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. It looks like if you were a conspiracy theorist, looks like the powers to be might be slowly winning. Because at what point does our MLS kind of lose its luster? Tell me. I mean, I was told from the very beginning the main purpose of the MLS was the unilateral offer of compensation. Which meant one party would offer compensation, and we had the whole arbitration process and everything that played out. That just went away. I don't know. Which is going to be even more interesting going forward to our Maris reps, Michelle, to keep this MLS together, because it's going to be a challenge. Buyer agreement requirement. Okay, this is interesting. On August 1st, 2024, Maris will require a buyer agreement to be signed prior to showing properties. How will this change your experience? Due to the terms of the NAR settlement, the MLS will require signed buyer agreements executed prior to all showings. This paperwork must have all necessary signatures prior to the showing. To ensure compliance, Maris retains the right to request signed documents as needed.
That's not in the packet. Yeah.
I didn't put it in the packet because it comes later. Mark actually did this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Actually, hers was off a different one. So yeah, so here, you can just look up here. So this is an interesting. This is interesting. Let's put it that way, because I see a lot going on here with this, and I don't want to dive too deep in the weeds, because it's really not going to affect most people. But my first question is, to ensure compliance, why does Maris have to ensure my compliance? And Maris retains the right to request signed documents as needed. If I were to get this request from Maris, I don't know how I'm going to handle it. I'll be honest with you right now. Because I don't know that Maris has a right to a signed contract I have with another party. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
How's it gonna work with some of these listing agents that are like cowboys out there? And they're already trying to, the ones that are putting zeros in and already doing this stuff. Are they gonna require a buyer's agent to send them
Which
that buyer's agreement?
we discussed that in the office.
Who's gonna enforce it?
we discussed that in the office because that was something that I've seen brought up before on certain forums, like lab code agents and that. It's like, well, will we have to send our buyer agency agreements over to the listing side before we can schedule a showing? Well, I think you're treading on thin ice there because,
Unprofessional.
well, yeah, it is unprofessional. But remember, we kind of had the same discussion about escalation clauses when someone would put in, oh, you have to send over a copy of the contract. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I mean, you don't have a right to see our other offers, because that was something buyers agents used to do. It was like, okay, we'll put this escalation clause, but you need to send us back the contracts. And I never received a good answer on that as to whether or not you had to, because some arguments said, oh yeah, that's part of the offer, you have to. The other side is you don't have a right to our contracts.
Counter that. Actually, done that.
Yeah.
And seller wanted a bunch of money, and we didn't have the escalating offer close enough
Mm-hmm.
to get that top price for that second offer. We countered and removed the verbiage that we showed.
Yeah.
They actually accepted it.
Yeah.
But gray area.
Yeah.
We recommend that all the time. Get rid of all that junk. And just,
Counter anything. I mean, it's a negotiation. So the buyer's saying, hey, we want the offer, the seller can say no.
Right.
So you're I have to
Mm-hmm. It's just it's just weird because it was one of those things. The escalation clauses were different because you could just blow it off and go, no, I'm just not going to send it to you. When Maris reaches out and says, I want it, I'm just curious what authority they have to receive it.
I had a question when we were talking the other day about how you could be a sub-agent of the seller.
Mm-hmm.
I had emailed Maris and asked them about the buyer's agent, and he came back and said, we're required by their rule on the written buyer's agreement. But on a side note, he said, my reading of the website is that there are buyer agreement forms that do not necessarily establish full agency. So would that mean that there's buyer agreement forms that would establish you as a sub-agent?
Mm.
Like a whole different.
Well, there's a whole different thing because he said it doesn't really establish. Could they be referring to Zillow's showing agent form?
what does that do though?
Well, and here again, this kind of what I get back to of the different dynamics going on. Of the state still has what has to go into a buyer agency agreement. So if you have them sign something that does not comply with the state law, you're still in violation of state law then, even though because that was a whole argument when Zillow did their showing agent form, which, by the way, that lasted a whole day and a half or 2 days. I haven't heard a word about that since because they realized that was stupid. So that's going to be interesting, which which also trumps that whole dynamic of we used to be able to show a house without an agency agreement, and you would just default to a transaction agency. Well, that's governed by the state. Now this lawsuit says that, but the state doesn't care still. So that's kind of why we're in this.
That was another question too. What happens
It's
if
grayer.
an agent doesn't, a buyer doesn't? It's also the importance of why you have a buyer consultation beforehand. But what happens if the buyer wants to see the house and they don't want to enter an agreement yet? You show them the house and they really like you, and then they're going to be ready to enter the buyer's agency agreement. I mean, why do you have to have one up front? Who's going to know?
But that's what was making me think. So
Yeah.
are they having a buyer's agency for a transaction broker? Is there a form for a transaction broker?
Why should there be?
Yeah, that's kind of what
Mhm.
was making me think was that now there's I want to.
Well, and it all comes back down to the listing agent. Is the listing agent going to tell you you can't show things in your
Right.
agreement? Which I can see some of them doing.
Yeah. So, all right, let's move along here. What do I have next? Oh, that was the end of this. So now we will go back into our. Oh, I already had this. Hang on. All right. Now this is the fun part. These are predictions. This is Mark's wild ass guess on what's going to happen over the next 6 months to a year. And although I've been kind of right so far, so let's see how it goes. July 1st, the new forms will take effect. So as of June 31st, you use the old forms, you'll log into Forms for Us on July 1st, and you're going to see a whole new set of forms. Well, not a whole new set, but a lot of different forms. 817 is, from what I understand, is when the public advertising starts on the lawsuit, which means, you know how we had a big dust up and it's all we talked about for, everyone talked about that for like months and months, and now it's kind of died off. It's all going to come back again. The lawyers. On 817 is when you're going to start getting calls from clients or customers going, hey, I got this postcard in the mail that says if I sold a house between these 2 years and here, and here, I may be entitled to compensation. What's this all about? You might, honestly, it was a big enough settlement, you might even turn on TV and see, did you sell a house between these years? You may be entitled to compensation. And it's all going to start dusting up again. So, and that's why I bring this up, because a lot of agents are going to start freaking the hell out again, like, what's going on? And that's just because it's time for them to start advertising out to the masses. When the first person gets their check, can somebody call me? Because I want to know what the aggrieved parties are going to really get out of this. Yeah, I can't wait to see what the aggrieved parties really end up getting. So yeah, and again, I bring that up because that's going to become a big issue that everyone's going to talk about, and it's going to be all in the news all over again. So
What would you say to them?
I say, you know what? We got blindsided in a class action lawsuit, like everyone else got blinded in a class action lawsuit. Everyone who does anything good and makes any money, there's always a pool of lawyers out there who are standing there just to take it away. I would go back and use the same example I used before. It's like, well, it said I might have overpaid. Yes. And also it said anyone who uses Roundup is going to get cancer. Did they? It also said actually, the latest one I just saw was, were you injured by an airbag? If you were injured by an airbag, call us. You may be entitled to compensation. Which I'm like, okay, maybe you're entitled to compensation. Maybe you were injured by an airbag. But you know what? Hitting a windshield at 45 miles an hour injures you too. So, I mean, and it's just all those, and the same example I use. Philip Morris got hit with the highest class action lawsuit in history. Last time I checked, you can still walk into any gas station and buy cigarettes. It's, you know what it is? It's just, what you tell them? This is the cost of doing business. This is why you got to pay me 6%. Tell them that. Like, you know what? I would love to cut you a break, but unfortunately, I got to pay some lawyer $150 million. So, sorry. So that's when the public advertising hits. Next 6 months is going to be, I think, the most interesting time, because the next 6 months is when this whole thing is going to have to shake itself out, and we still don't. What's today's date? 15th or something? 12th. In my opinion, we still don't have enough answers from the group, and by the group I mean our total association. I'm not looking to the association of realtors to fix this. I'm looking at all of us individual people to fix this. And right now, it just seems like either a lot of people just have their head buried in the sand, or B, are so scared they don't even want to talk about it. That's why it's going to take a while for it to shake out. I believe the weaker agents in our market are going to have a hell of a time for the next 6 months. I look to see this is when a lot of agents get out, because it's going to be more of a challenge for them. Now, for the stronger agents, it's going to be nothing but a benefit. I love adversity, because the people who really thrive are the ones who jump into it. So I would not let the next 6 months scare you. By the weaker agents, I mean the person who walks in to take someone's listing, sits down, and guy goes, how much do you charge? Well, we normally charge this is 6%. I'm not paying buyer side. Screw that. They can kiss my ass. And the agent who goes, oh, okay, writes it down to 0. They're going to have a hell of a transaction on their hands. Because if they can't negotiate that at the kitchen table, how are they going to negotiate it against a strong buyer's agent on the other side? And what's going to happen is their their listing is going to sit for a while because, and not because of what we've been told. We've been told, oh, agents are going to steer away from that. No, it's not. It's going to sit because they got a shitty seller and no one explained to them the benefits of how to sell your house. They just said, okay. I said this a million times. When your client drives the bus, it goes off right into a ditch. Every time. Every time. You've got to drive the bus. And it might even mean getting up and walking out of a listing. You know, when I looked at, I tell a seller, if you want to get top dollar for your house and you really want to market this right, you want to get sold immediately, this is what I think you should do. And when they look at you and go, hell no, I'm not doing that. Sorry, I don't think I can help you. And you get up and walk out. Because I believe the agents who get into that, they're going to think they're doing it right up front, and it's going to be nothing but a crap show for them the whole way through. That's why. Do I even have it here in my predictions? Yeah, hang on. I'll get to it. So that's why I think the weaker agents in this are going to really, really struggle. But now, because of that, the rest of us have to work with them. So that's why starting now and over the course of the next few weeks, months, we're going to go through the role playing and the types of objections that you're going to come up against, because you're going to have to deal with this with other agents. You will have a buyer who falls in love with the house and says, this is the one I want, that has a 0% payout. You got to be able to handle that transaction. Because if not, I see a lot of these agents, more than I would hope. A lot of these agents are going to get halfway into their deal and realize they're not getting paid. I can see that coming. They're going to be like 2 weeks into it, and they're going to send all their information over the title company, and they're going to say, so how much are you getting paid? They're like, oh, I don't know, I've checked the MLS. You watch, that's going to happen. And they're like, that's not even on the MLS anymore.
So you think people are gonna go ahead and not get a buyer's agreement and still work the deal?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of agents, because face it, we live in like the 80-20 rule. 20% of the agents do 80% of the business. So there's a lot of agents out there who have no clue this is even going on. They just don't. And they're going to get halfway through their deal and realize there is no payout, because a lot of agents would not even check the payout because they just assume it's there. They know it's going to be somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. Hey, if it's 3%, they pat themselves on the back. If it's 2.5%, they go, not bad. But now they're going to get halfway through the deal and realize there is no payout. What are they going to do?
And those are the same agents we're chasing them for the buyer's agent.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know they needed
Mm-hmm.
But that goes back to who's gonna enforce that.
Yeah.
It says you can't show the house unless you have it.
Mm-hmm.
Who's gonna police
I don't know. Well, and unfortunately, when an agent in our office comes to me and says, Mark, I didn't know this, what am I going to do?
What does another agent care if you have one or not? Like, why would they care?
Well, I don't care. I know when I'm getting paid. I mean, as the listing agent, I'd be like, what do I care about?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering how they work.
You have to live literally under 4 rocks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you sell one house a year and you're your own broker,
You would be surprised.
I don't care for you.
Hey, but Nathan, and
Or fiber.
along that same note, the reason why we're doing this and the reason why I'm recording it is because we have heard from very large offices, agents going, man, we don't talk about that at all. I'm like, very large, very franchised offices that you would think would be all over this. And they're like, nah, we haven't really talked about it, not that much. I'm like, how can you not talk about it? This is going to be a huge change. I don't think it's going to be a bad change, but it's going to be a huge change. So, like, for instance, buyer's commission is now on the contract. You know what I foresee in my predictions? This is going to be a negotiated field. You don't think it's not? You send over a contract that you want the seller to pay 3% of your buyer's closing costs, and they counter back with 2% or 1%. If you're a weak agent, you're going to go, damn, I only going to make 1% on this. You're going to have to be a strong enough agent to go, okay, we're going to work this back in the deal. Because if not, you're going to end up selling houses at 1%, 0.5%.
You already have your commission already on your buyer's agency.
But how many agents are going to go, I don't know.
Well,
All right, that's all I'm gonna get.
You're selling it to the seller and to your buyer.
Mhm. You know why? Because those weak agents are going to look at it like, well, but my buyer really likes this house and I have to do the right thing. So if I don't accept this 1%, I'm going to stand in the way of them getting a house. That's what they're going to think.
But they already know.
But is the weak agent going to be able to throw that value back at them and say, hey, we had agreed upon 3%. So this is all part of the deal. Now there's different ways I can structure this, and it's going to have to be part of a counteroffer process. But I'm just putting out there that this is a field on the contract. So don't think for 1 second the sellers aren't going to counter your commission back.
I say we have Beth Burton role play this.
You know what, I just took somebody to new construction, just wrote new construction, and I have buyer's agreement, I always do that first. And I explained to them, this is what I charge, and if the sellers don't pay this, the difference is your responsibility. And he's fine with it, he understands it, and we get there, and the builder, I think it's a good builder, but the builder was he was new, the representative, and he tells my client, he goes, oh, just so you know, we're gonna pay her, so you don't have to worry about that. And he goes, you're only paying her 2.7, you're not paying her. And I'm like, well, I did something good. But I mean, I think everybody should do that. If you've explained it to your client sufficiently, then they know.
Yeah.
That this is what you charge.
Well, and in a nutshell, and that's going to be all part of all the trainings going forward, that's going to have to be a conversation. In the past, face it, in reality, no one ever had that conversation. I mean, oh yeah, but I mean, everyone would just say, oh, here, sign my buyer agency agreement, if they even had it up front. I mean, I remember I told you the story how I got when I was at the board one time, and I told them, so I was in front of a whole thing of agents. I'm like, okay, who has had a buyer agency agreement signed at the closing table? And they're like, no. I said, oh, come on, am I the only one? They're like, I'm like, no. I know that happens 90% of the time. I mean, you just never even had the conversation. Now we're going to have the conversation. And it may be, for some people, a little uncomfortable, but that's our conversation.
I think it's easier to bring it up now because of the lawsuit.
It is. Yes.
So what you're saying is, in the past, norm, on the buyer side, is at 2.5, most agents just went with 2.5.
Yes.
That was it. As opposed to having that conversation with their client and saying, hey, our fee is this, 2.7 or 3%.
Right.
And whatever the seller doesn't pay, the buyer has to make that up. You're saying that a lot of agents wasn't having that.
Never had that conversation.
I do that with every
99%
client.
of agents never had that conversation. They would just accept it.
Oh, no.
They would. They would. Well, you know why? Because they never instilled their own value up front.
If I may.
Yeah.
So, at the brokerage firm I was with before I came here, they did not give the buyer's agents any empowerment over that.
No.
You had no option but to take whatever they were giving you. So that was a big perk for me whenever I came here. It's like, I get to choose. I get to choose my work.
Well,
And I've already started to negotiate now before this settlement goes into effect because I've already been negotiating, because we can choose what our pay is.
Well, I'll tell you a quick story. How one of the reasons why we ended up with our own buyer agency agreement was I was at a conference many years ago, 15 years ago, and they talked about buyer agency and getting more than what the actual payout was through the MLS. And this was all news to me. I'm like blowing my mind going, I didn't know any of this. So I came back. I'm like, well, we're going to start doing this. I pulled up our standard buyer agency agreement. And in there at the time, 15 years ago, it specifically stated you had to take the amount that was being offered and you could not charge another dime. It was specifically in our buyer agreement. So I went, oh, well, crap, I can't do it. So then I waited for another year until the conference came around again. And I'm sitting in the bar area with all these agents. I'm like, damn, how are they doing this? So then I came back and I pulled up the Missouri State Form, and the Missouri State Form said the exact opposite. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. This isn't a law. This is just our Forms are us document. Because the state law said the exact same thing that we're actually going to start doing now. That's been in our buyer agency agreement all along. That you can charge whatever you want, and then the buyers have to make up the difference. I was like, what? Light bulb came on. I'm like, huh.
Did it because I just felt like, you know, this is my work. And then when you have bills that are below a certain amount, I think agents should have a set fee
Mhm.
that they charge, you know? Say like this house is 90,000 or 85,000. You know, you should have a set minimum cash fee that
Yes.
you will, you know, go with and let your buyer know upfront. You know, to me, it's like knowing your worth.
Yes. And see, in the past, in my opinion, yeah, go ahead.
On the buyer agency, are you able to collect the check from them that day for like the $395
Yes.
and just write it to Alexander?
Yeah, come in. Mm-hmm.
And you get paid on it right away.
I love that. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised if you ask for that check up front. You'll be shocked how many times you get it. You're gonna think right now. Everyone's thinking right now, oh, that's not gonna happen.
The transaction fee,
Uh-huh.
you charge them for that right
Up front.
It's in there, it says it's due upon,
Mhm.
right, and non-refundable.
You don't have to wait till it closes.
One of like the first pages you brought up,
Oh shoot.
was whenever your buyer agreement says you cannot receive more compensation from any other source.
Yes.
So I get a buyer agreement, let's say I'm working for a friend, being nice and getting.
Mhm.
Okay. Whatever reason for that. We go and make an offer and I try to get 3% concession from the seller to pay my commissions.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't have an agreement with the buyer that says, hey, I'm charging you 2, but if I can get free from the seller, I'm gonna get free. I can't do that.
Well, and that's a very good question.
It's like a net commission versus a net listing.
Yes.
I can't get a net commission.
Correct. And believe me, I'm already thinking about the workarounds on that because there has to be some sort of workarounds. Because right now, again, this is where we're all defaulting to the very conservative side. Because you talk to anyone out there, they're gonna say, "Oh no, you can only get what's on that form." But well, you can't you? Can't you?
And can't you say do a 3% until your friend, right? If they're your friend, that like, listen, I'm only doing it for 3%, hoping that the other, you know, I'm gonna try
Correct.
to get that 3%. And then worst case scenario, you know, I'll amend it down.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. If you think for 1 second, I'm going to let everyone put 2% on there and walk away from 1% on each deal, you're kidding yourself. We're going to figure out a way to make that work. So yeah, because you're right. Everything can be amended. Again, they'll tell you, oh, it has to be on there, and you can't. But no one has really told me yet if you can put on there blank percent or any other additional monies. I mean, because they get signed off on by both parties, so it's still disclosed. Again, I think that's one of these things where right now, for the first few months, oh my God, no, you can't do that. And probably 6 months from now, that's going to be kind of commonplace.
Well, like on the residential sales contract where it says compensation comes from buyer and seller.
Correct. And you're right. I think right now I'm going to tell you the official stance is nope. You have to charge what's on your buyer agency agreement. But I don't. Nothing. Not a word. Well, and that's another thing. Right now, this goes back to the first 6 months being kind of a crap show. There's a lot of things going on right now between the lawsuit, the MREC, Maris, and the associations, and nobody really has any answers.
Sorry to bring this
No.
up subject, but there are large groups that are leaving NAR completely.
Yes.
Right? And is that
The only one I know of that's left NAR completely has been Redfin. I think that's
that
gonna.
left them open to another lawsuit?
I don't know. I think it's gonna bite them in the ass, personally. But they've always had a whole different business model, and that's just. I mean, that's just who they've always been. Yeah. I mean, hell, their business model is we're one of the cheapest in town. I don't know about you, but I don't want to have that be my business model.
They can do the shit, and then we're gonna break it up.
Oh, are we? Okay. All right. I predict zero payouts are going to jump a lot. I mean, you're going to see it a lot right off the bat because of the weaker agents. I think over time, it's going to slowly drift back off. So I bring it up just so if everyone's freaking out about, oh my God, everything I'm showing, there's like zero payout. I don't know what I'm going to do. I think it's going to slowly morph its way back. So I wouldn't worry about it. Well, you got to worry about it enough to get through it, but then it's gonna. I think it's gonna even itself out. The co-op will either be on the MLS as a concession or individual websites. This is where the payouts are going to be displayed. Again, they say that the buyer agency field cannot be on the MLS, but they say we can advertise seller concessions, and no one really knows what that means. So I'm thinking what's going to eventually happen is up front. If I were to call Maris right now and go, hey, in the agent remarks section, can I put seller concessions of 3%? Maris is going to tell me no. But I think 6 months from now, that's where you're going to see it.
But if you call that
Mhm.
agent,
Mhm.
they could tell you that.
Correct. So I think that's what's going to happen on MLS right now, and it's going to be on individual websites. So like if you're people like a house, you're going to go to the Coldwell Banker website, type in 123 Main Street, scroll down, and go, oh, there's a 3% buyer payout.
Take a picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
There could be some confusion over seller concessions and like the prepays, you know, like we normally say, okay, we want the seller to
Yeah.
give us $5,000.
That's actually addressed in the contract. So one of the things we've been working on is we may develop an internal spreadsheet here in our office, like a Google Drive, because this is what I envision also, a Google Drive with all of our listings and with all of our payouts, which can either be displayed on Maris, which I don't know if Maris is going to allow or not, or at least something that we can email out to agents or direct them to.
Kind of ties into what you said, like, each listing has an offer submission right now, correct? We can put it in a website where they can go submit an online offer.
Yeah, I think so.
So why don't we just have that go directly to our website and the actual listing?
Yeah, you could.
It might be a day after because ours updates one day later.
Mhm.
It's the listing days. But then it goes to our website and we have it right at the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
You don't go search for the brokerage. You don't know which, if you're like Berkshire or Coldwell, have like 3 different company names. You don't know which one to go to.
Mhm.
Just using the offer submission link right
Yeah.
on the MLS and it goes.
well, and that's one of the reasons why I can't believe we as a group have not had this figured out yet. Because on July 1st, your phone's going to blow up. Because every agent out there is going to be, the agents who know what's going on are going to call going, what's the payout on this one? What's the payout on this one? And that's why we have to develop an internal system here, because on Saturday afternoon, I'm not answering 35 phone calls from your brand new listing going, what's the payout on here? What's the payout on this?
Need to have a line on the agent commercial that says email
Mhm.
for compensation.
Yeah.
And then you can just blanket it.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe we won't be able to use
Well,
their compensations, maybe it'll be.
And my guess again is if I were to call Maris right now and say we want to set up a Google Docs spreadsheet and put that link in agent remarks, Maris is right to tell me no, you can't do that, because right now they're like we can't do anything. But I think over time that's something like that is probably what's going to work its way out.
What are we gonna do about listings that are already in there prior to that August first, that have, that are operating under the rules
Correct.
that are currently
Correct.
play,
You're
and then all of a sudden that field's just gonna go away, like how
Yes.
do you say
And that's-
that? Like, I mean,
that's this gray area we're in, because you're right. You still have, according to the MRC, you still have a valid signed listing contract, and the MRC is 100% great with that. Now Maris is like, oh, we have to take this field off. So now you're going to have to address that. So anyway, I think that is the last of the predictions right now. So we will break.
Yeah, we're gonna, everybody, we're gonna take a 3-minute break. I think, where's Joanne?
Here.
Hi.
Bob is here.
I'm sorry.
Bob is here, Macy is here, ready to talk. We'll just get it set up. Once she doesn't arrive, you have to.
Cool.
So yeah, 3-minute break, and if lunch is here, then we'll eat at the same time, otherwise, but we have still a lot more to cover. So, do you guys wanna take a break, or do you want Bob to do it?
All right, take a break. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you need. Huh? No, you're good. All right. First change on the residential sale contract. You notice in paragraph 3, right below where it says purchase price, we have two new fields. It's either dollar amount or percentage of purchase price shall be credited to the seller at closing towards buyer's closing costs, prepaid points, and other fees allowed by lender. This was actually line 72 or something like that on a contract, wasn't it? And then they actually moved it up here to the front to be in line with all the rest of the pricing. Line 36, though, is brand new. 36 is dollar sign or percentage price of purchase shall be paid by seller at closing towards buyer broker's compensation. This is in addition to any amount agreed upon in the separate cooperative compensation disclosure form 2108. We'll get to that form in just a minute. So this is where you would write in any compensation the seller is going to pay to you, the buyer's agent. This is where you'd write in your 2.5 or 3% or whatever the heck you want to write in.
How is that different than the separate?
Well, this is honestly, I should back up. This is in addition to any amount agreed upon. So if you've already sent over that form, it's already signed off on, this would be any additional monies. That's a good point. Thank you for bringing it up. Like let's say you sent that form over before and they agreed to pay 2.5%, and now your buyer agreement says 3%. So you'd put in the 0.5%.
So really, there's also compensation versus closing costs.
Correct. Correct.
This, yeah.
See how that's going to put everyone kind of on that? See? You'll see, you know what, actually, yeah, I will. I will here just a second.
I'm sorry, just to make sure I understand, so the first red section is like if the seller is giving the buyer closing costs.
Correct. That's what used to be on line 71 or 72 of our contract.
Financing portion.
Yeah.
That's what that line for is.
And the second red portion is in addition to any agreement.
Yeah,
So
any other outside
it's
agreement.
technically still set.
Correct.
And it doesn't fall
Correct.
within the 50% max, like
That's what's my difference.
Correct. And I should also back up and tell everyone, there's still at least, I know of one, I think there's 2 more forms classes at the St. Charles Association. I'd highly recommend anyone, don't just rely upon me and say, okay, I got it all down. If you want to go sit through this class again, it's not going to hurt you. If nothing else, hear it from someone else's perspective. Yeah, okay, there you go. So yeah, this would be anything in addition. Let's see what the next changes are. Oh, it was line 74 and 75. This is what used to be, and now it's taken off and thrown back up front. Which they actually removed, here, this is a good point. They actually removed the section that no one really ever used. Oh, no, they didn't. Additional earnest money. I mean, we've used that so few
You
times.
know what, though? That's a good place to put an extra 10 grand after your contingencies in that if you're in a multiple offer situation.
And that's what it's used for. I mean, you know, if just in case you're wondering, in the past, it's always been normally on higher dollar ones, like you're selling a house for $1.5 million or $2 million. Say they may put down $5,000, but once they get through their inspections, that increases to $25,000. You know, so
I feel like that would separate you, though, even for a $500,000 house.
yeah, that it would. So that was the one that came off. Now it's actually broke down in the actual form itself. This is still up on one page. This is the cooperative compensation disclosure form 2180. It's going to be one of the riders, which goes along, and I believe it's a rider we're going to use a lot. But when we get to it, I want to discuss it. So, in addition to all of these up there, which we're all familiar with, there is a cooperative compensation disclosure which gets added into the riders.
And it will be on this.
Mm-hmm.
And are they positive this is gonna go into effect July 1st?
That's what they're telling me.
And does the rider have to be checked for it to be like valid?
Well, the rider, yeah, that would make it part of the contract then if it's checked here.
Where's the forfeit?
Yeah, we'll get to that in just 1 second here.
Pass out some stuff.
No, it's just,
Oh,
yeah, it's just schematics. I mean, Okay. Sources of compensation. They basically took the seller off the front, put it afterwards. Seller, if applicable, cooperative compensation disclosure. If cooperating compensation is being offered, seller and buyer agree to pay the compensation to the listing broker and the buyer broker in such forms as amounts as authorized in the attached cooperative compensation disclosure. You're seeing this coming up a lot, aren't you? Seller and buyer agree that listing broker and buyer broker are third-party beneficiaries under this contract. Kind of goes back to your point, Mickey. I was told for the last 25 years we are not parties to the contract. Doesn't it consider parties to the contract now? Just like that, we all of a sudden became parties to the contract. I'm sure it does. Yeah, I'm sure it does. It opens up liability for everything. So, yeah, so this would be the sources of compensation, either buyer or seller. Basically, if the seller's paying anything, it gets checked off. If your buyer's paying all of it, pretty much out of their pocket, then yeah, or any portion.
So we still just check.
I probably end up checking both, just in case. Yeah.
Because it's an admin fee.
Now there's a new amendment to sale contract. The seller agrees to pay at closing a cost not to exceed. Basically, all they're doing is they're putting in a small little paragraph there to allow sellers to pay part of our commission, which I really can't call it commission. I have to call it compensation now.
So this is after you go behind the scenes and you rediscuss everything, then you redo it?
Yeah.
Do we have any taxes on this?
So are they changing the guidelines with, the lenders? So like on conventional, you can only pay, seller can only do 3% concession?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, they re-clarified because quite honestly, none of us knew. I didn't know that we used to think it was just like 3% and it was maxed out. Now they're saying, well, no, that's those are two separate things, which we never really knew.
But what about FHA and VA?
VA just rolled out yesterday that the buyer can now pay broker fees and commission.
So can they pay them or can it be rolled into the loan?
It can be paid. When you say roll it into the loan, it's gonna be a situation where you have to increase the purchase price, hope that appraisal comes in, and the seller also.
Well, why, but would you have to increase the price? Not necessarily. The seller would agree to that price.
That cost cannot be rolled in. So it would be a situation where the seller would have to increase the price and give a credit back. They're still netting the same, but they wouldn't be able
They
to.
couldn't just net it back though without increasing that price.
Well, they could, they would just be netting less.
Right.
Right,
But
correct,
you wouldn't have to agree.
correct.
All right, I think.
And one more
go ahead.
clarification is there hasn't been anything that said the seller cannot pay the commissions on the statement. So they can offer the 3% commissions, but in theory, we can still put it on the seller's side, still give a buyer an additional 3% in concessions.
Okay.
Yeah, so we haven't heard yet that we cannot put it on the seller's statement.
Good deal.
And the food is here, we're gonna set it up and then we'll let you guys.
Oh, okay.
Sorry for the.
No, it's okay. We'll go through the commission agreement and then we'll take a short break. So I think everyone has seen this in the past. This is kind of an old form. The commission agreement is an agreement between two brokerages. And there's going to be like a distinct difference. I'll actually touch this when we come back. This is between the two brokerages. This is what we would always use to clarify or to change anything that was on the MLS. But now since it's not going to be on the MLS, I'm not really sure what we're going to use this for. Well, yeah, kind of weird. So yeah, it's just here, seller listing broker shall not receive compensation for broker services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to in the agreement with the buyer. Again, this takes me back to what we said before. If you read what that says, you will not receive compensation for broker service from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to in the agreement with the buyer. but it doesn't necessarily state what the agreement with the buyer has to say. It's interesting. Other terms regarding compensation. Offhand, I can't think of what's going to go in there.
Vacation house.
Vacation.
Like, I mean, like you could give somebody like 2 weeks in your vacation home.
There you go.
Can you do that?
Yeah.
Like, I'm serious.
No, you could. Okay. You remember, it's a funny story for anyone who doesn't know this. I remember back in the early 2000s, before that crash, you were buying houses in Phoenix, and builders were offering a free Mercedes-Benz with the purchase of a house. Mm-hmm. And they were including like they were including like TVs, but that was back when TVs were like thousands of dollars. You know, they put them all in there. But they just wordsmithing. They changed it too.
So both of these have to be filled out every time?
Well, here do you want to? You think they're ready? Let's break right now, real quick.
Yeah, if everybody wants to grab their sandwich and just come back, we'll do it while.
Yeah, because this is an important form. So, again, I'll rehash a little bit because I didn't have the thing turned on. Blank percent of the purchase price to buyer's agents, to transaction agents, or to sub agents. This is just if the listing side is already agreed to pay out to the buyer side. And if there is no compensation paid out, then that defaults back to the actual sales contract. Remember where you had those lines where the sellers are to pay an amount?
So I think, is the listing agreement changing at all?
Yes.
Okay.
It's funny you should ask. Right here, listing agreement. Broker's compensation. This is where you'd write in. If you want nothing to change, you can just write in, broker will pay 6% of purchase price or a flat fee described among. Boom, you're done. And then on the cooperating broker side, you can put in what the payouts are going to be. Boom, boom, boom. Buyer's agent, transaction, or sub agents.
So that's not added. I think those aren't supposed to be separate.
Well, this is the total compensation, the way I read it. And then this would be cooperating broker. Owner acknowledges that the broker is authorized to cooperate with owner and compensate brokers and any affiliate licensees. So this would be the payout. How it's on our listing contract right now, you know where there's that section that shows we're going to pay 2.7, 2.7, 2.7? That's what this is right here. Right.
So if this is part of the listing contract, then isn't it already set in stone and not negotiable? Because
Correct.
they've already said they're gonna pay it.
Correct.
They're listing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, see, this is how we can continue to operate the same way we are right now. You would just take your normal listing, put in your 2.7s, and boom. Yeah.
Which is why I agree with Beth, what this cooperative compensation form that's already been determined, just be signed at the listing. At the listing.
Yeah, you could. Honestly,
Put that in the back.
yeah, honestly,
Sign that.
a best practice is go ahead and get that signed when you can, because then when the offer comes in, you're already that much ahead of the game.
What if they only ask for 2.5%? You can sign there.
Well, listing broker gets to be correct.
Well, it's funny you mention that.
I need to go back to like 21. Where?
I
I don't understand how you say that's the total. I understand that's how it used to be. For like 21, where does that say that's the total?
Broker compensation is 6% of the purchase price. That's it.
But why, nowhere does it say cooperating broker is part of the total broker? Oh, I see. I still think in my head,
It looks like it's in addition.
yes.
Look at the bold in the next paragraph, and maybe a part of the above.
There you go. And maybe part of the yeah. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
You're all good so far?
More sense to have the like listing agent also at the bottom?
Well, see, in the past, the buyer side never saw what the listing agents made.
Right.
Yeah.
No?
No, you still won't. So line 32 and 33, which is what somebody just brought up, the difference between 2.5 and 2.7. You know, because as we know, you cannot collect what's more than on your buyer agency agreement. So if you're at 2.5 and they agree to pay out 2.7, what happens to that 0.2%? That's addressed right here, line 32 and 33. If compensation agreed upon broker is less than the amount stated, the difference will or will not be reduced from broker compensation.
Well, not,
I would always say will not. I mean, heck, if the buyer side agrees to 2%, I'll make the extra half. So, unrepresented buyer. Okay, this is a fun one. In the event the buyer is not represented by a broker, and I bring this up because this is going to happen, at least up front, I think, more than I would like it to. In the event a buyer is not represented by a broker, broker compensation shall remain the same as the amount listed or shall be modified as following. Everyone can understand that? Remember in the past, because in the past it was always, I shouldn't say always, it was a lot of times you charge someone, let's say you charge them 6%. And they're like, okay, well, if there's not another agent on the other side, okay, I'll go ahead and do it for 4. That's fine. Well, now we're actually writing that in the contract.
Then you have to put it on the, but it's, well, I guess that's not.
No. It's like,
Those deals that became the
well,
more problematic ones.
well, and that's why, since I'll talk amongst ourselves here. My thought was the initial thought. What brought this whole lawsuit on was, well, I'm only going to pay one side. I'm not paying the other side. So when the buyer says to you, well, I don't want to use my agent. I'm going to go right to the listing agent. That way I won't have to pay anybody. Well, then what are you going to charge your seller? I don't know about you guys, but I'm not too keen on working for half because now I got to work both sides of the deal. And there's actually even like another step. It's not just, I mean, can you imagine what negotiating the building inspection is like if you're on both sides? And then what a pain in the ass that's going to be, because you're going to have both sides calling you bad names. So not only that, what I look at is if you work as the listing agent, you're like, well, I don't care. You know, I'll charge my half. Buyers come in, I'll write the contract. When the contract goes south and the lawsuits start flying, there's only one brokerage involved. Who gets sued? One brokerage. Now they get sued by either side. So you just doubled your liability. So not that it really affects you guys as much, but for me, I look at this like, man, it's like double the liability. So anyway, just so you know, that's in there right now. Additional compensation, that would be if you charge like a transaction fee of some kind, a marketing fee, whatever that would be. Dual agency, either accepted or is not accepted. Ours is not because we use the transaction addendum. Authorization, disclosure authorization.
So the listing
No,
agreement
it's always
is now 8 pages?
Yeah. You know what? Was this always in ours? Hey, does anyone know? Because this was always in the state one. I do know. The state listing agreement?
I've never been,
Okay.
I know.
Does or does not permit brokers to disclose the existence of other offers? Permit broker to disclose in terms of offers? Okay. Okay. Yeah, that was always on the state form, but now it's in our local association form. Again, when you're talking with the seller, there's pros and cons to both. It's whatever they want.
I think it's good to have that in there.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, is it wrong to say, yes, couple of offers?
Well, yeah, and you're right. There's like a whole school of thought to that, whether you should, and unfortunately, a lot of times, I'm glad it's in there because a lot of times the agents took that upon themselves. Whether or not you should, because we're always told, you cannot discuss the terms of an offer. Well, you can. You just have to have authorization from your seller.
So that's what they're showing now, is if somebody calls and says, hey, you have the offer, yeah, I have an offer at this price, this price, this price. As long as that box.
As long as that box is checked, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and see, because here was the opposite side of that. You tell people, oh no, you couldn't tell anyone you had any offers that. Well, now, I mean, because you wouldn't want someone to not offer on a property if they knew it was already too high, or if they knew there was already multiple offers. So now it puts all the powers back to the seller. And in true fashion, the sellers are going to screw it up most of the time. Photographs and internet, basically, okay, this authorizes interior images. And again, I just want to harp on photographs. Once again, when it comes to photographs, if you did not take the picture yourself, make sure you know who did, because there's still companies out, some more of these leeches, these lawyers who just like to run around and extort money out of you for using someone's copyrighted image. So if you just download something off Google and it's like the front entrance to a subdivision or a condo complex, if you didn't take that picture yourself, make sure you know you have rights to use it.
You can't use the old picture sets and MLS and
No, because they will come back. Surveillance and recording, that's kind of a talk for a different day about telling people about cameras. FERPTA, skip that.
Do sellers have to disclose to us that they have cameras or video?
Not that I know of. Not that I mean, I assume every time I walk into a house, I'm being watched. So, and you can tell your buyers there's no better way to destroy their entire negotiation ability than to stand on the front porch and talk about the house.
Mark that last one's highlighted so they don't ask you for us.
Oh yeah, you know what? Here, I should bring this up. This is on the listing agreement. It says broker's signature. We authorize agents to sign on our behalf, so this doesn't have to be me. This can be you.
Another thing, I highlighted the owner email address because if you have their email address, that means they can send it to amendments through email. Or price reduction through email.
Here's the authorization to show. Here's the authorization to show. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because we don't really use it a lot, but once in a while we kind of dabble into it. Like if there's an Hey, listen, everybody. Okay, this is the authorization to show form. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because we don't really get into it that much, but we do kind of dabble with it once in a while if it's an unlisted property, you know, like a for sale by owner. This basically just kind of breaks out everything it was all part of the settlement. It's kind of self-explanatory. What else we got? Again, that's all part of that form. Okay. So that was about the extent of the forms changes that we use most of the time. There's a lot of other ones that went into like rental stuff and that, you know, but you might want to look at that, but we really don't get into it that much. So I just want to hit the highlights of these. And now I want to Yes. Correct. And just to piggyback, someone had brought it up. This was an email I got about the VA yesterday, talking about how they're going to allow the veterans to pay. And in here, where does it say it? Temporary veterans to pay reasonable and customary amounts to the buyer broker. Here, buyer broker charges are not included in the loan amount. So that's where we'll have to get a little creative, being able to pay the buyer side out of the seller's proceeds. Again, it's not like it's earth shattering, but just to let you know that the buyers can't finance that amount. Now, depending on how this whole thing shakes out, the VA might have to amend that and allow them to actually finance this. Who knows? Again, because as we know now, all rules can be changed with the stroke of a pen.
I think this wording, the VA
the buyers can pay it, but as of right now, it has to actually be like, it has to come off their side and be part of the funds that they actually bring in, which to me, I think we're either going to have to be able to dance around this or the VA is going to change it, because the whole point of a VA loan is they get to get in with no money. So now if they all of a sudden got to come in with a check for $8,000 or $10,000 or $12,000, it defeats the whole point of the loan. But there's ways to increase the amount and have the sellers pay that back. So, well, again, the buyer charges are paid by the veterans are not to be considered in determining whether the veteran has sufficient, are to be considered in determining whether they have the sufficient liquid assets to close the loan. So all this basically says is if the buyers have to come in now with $10,000, that has to factor into whether or not they can afford the loan.
The other one that you go like 110%.
I don't know. I don't know.
What was your question, Nathan?
The other one where you can go like 110% value.
Yes.
Okay. I just
That's
took
it, might
that.
just take-
Yeah. Well, and I did the VA certification, and that was not ever.
Okay, this is a copy of our buyer agency agreement. We, I would say we, it was Renee. Actually went in and we've changed out the amounts. We can also customize this to anyone who wants to change their amounts. Okay. We still have the one with the blanks in it, but like always, from a sales standpoint, I've always discouraged filling in blanks because that's where everyone's attention gets drawn to right away. So, I mean, if you decide you want to charge a different transaction fee or a different amount, if we don't have one already, just holler and we'll get a change for you. Didn't we make the decision of not putting all of them out?
Yeah.
Because it was my brainiac idea. I'm like, well, let's just make up like eight or 10 different ones. And Renee's like, no, because it'll confuse the hell out of people. I'm like, yeah,
I
you're right.
do want to say, if you can, so this has always been our agreement. See the highlighted at the bottom, failure by broker to collect part all the compensation from the seller, listing broker shall not relieve the client's obligation to pay us the compensation provided on here. We've always done this, you guys. So if you've already been practicing this is really no change other than disclosing it. So this is our normal one. And now the St. Louis form, the reason why we didn't use it is because you had to accept their compensation, but they have that included in now. So you guys can use the St. Charles or the St. Louis form, but it's still like 6 pages long.
Right.
So that's up to you. I mean, you can get your money from them, but this is still only front and back side.
Right.
So,
We've never really told someone. I don't. Well, maybe we have in the past, but we modified and created our own buyer agency. Just so everyone knows again, our own buyer agency agreement, just because I wanted it to be simple. Because we come from a sales standpoint, and like especially like right now. Right now, just so you know, your competition out there. Whenever someone wants to go see a house, they're throwing down a 6 or 7 page contract and saying, "Okay, you have to sign this before I can go show you a house." I feel this is a lot less threatening. It's just a 1-page document. And we got audited by the MRAC 7-8 months ago, and it flew right through it.
twice.
Yeah, twice. So, yeah, so we're
There's
well in.
no number of houses or anything.
For this one.
Yeah, for this.
Right. We actually have 2 separate ones.
But hold on, so for this one, we have, this one is the $295 transaction fee at a 3%. I got one that's $295 and 2.7%. And then I got one that's $395 with a 3%. Because I know a lot of you guys do that. And then Beth Burton will have me make one for $495 and 3%. And then Mark's gonna go into the other one that we adjusted.
And this is the one for
No,
how long?
180 days.
6 months, yes.
So how is this different from the one that we're using now?
It's not, oh, I just
Ours-
changed the amount.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, ours didn't really change.
This is,
Did you
this is.
Now-
change compensation? $180 million change. It was always compensation.
We might have changed it. I don't know. Good point. Yeah.
Does it say commission on your compensation? I don't know.
One down below said compensation, I was just.
But I didn't.
Yeah, there we go.
Years and years.
Look at that.
ago.
What is commission?
You were way ahead of the game. See, you should have been the one doing this one. And this was a new one that we just drew up again. We just drew up in response to what was going on. This is a single or multiple property buyer agency agreement. So, like, if you have someone calls you today and says, "Hey, I want to go look at this house," and you're like, "Okay, but according to the settlements of the lawsuit, we have to buy this here, but it's just for this house. I'm going to show you." I feel that's a little less threatening. You can stair-step your way into one longer.
I didn't have number 2.
Okay. Yeah, the agreement commences when signed and expires at the end of escrow on above said property. So if you need that, that's part of it also.
Typically, you just have like that one all the time. All in the addresses, all addresses.
I guess you could.
Like, so we only have to use one.
Yeah.
Like a personal preference.
Yeah. Again, 295, 3%. Listing contract settlement disclosure.
Everybody has to get that.
Oh, no. I know why I put this out here. Because I'm going to throw this out here to you because this was part of the contracts package I received. And I'm not really sure. I'm going to go to the forms class to find out what the thought was behind this and why this is in existence. This looks like it's a unilateral disclosure of the lawsuit. Because as I read through it, it said, please be advised, and it goes in and talk all about the lawsuit and all the terms of it. And then it's only got signatures on there for our side. It's not acknowledged by the sellers. So I looked at this and I'm like, this is really interesting because it's just it's a unilateral disclosure. Why they would not have the sellers sign off on this? It says final draft.
It says listing agent, listing agreement.
I don't know. Because here I'm thinking, okay, if it doesn't have to be signed by both parties, why would I use this form?
I didn't even notice that.
And that's why I make the big bucks.
So when would you do this? When would you work this into the, what would you say?
I don't know. See, this will be part of a listing package. But again, until I find out otherwise, I'm not so keen on throwing this out there because, and again, not that I'm failing to disclose anything, but everything here is already in all the contracts, the listing agreements, everything else. This is just rehashing.
Temporary listings right now that are overflowing.
Oh, there you go. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Any office conversation made through MLS prior to August 1st, which result in transaction pending after, that's why you're signing it.
Got you. Okay.
This goes away after your listing is done.
There you go. Okay. Thank you for catching that.
That's the way I read it.
Thank you for catching that.
I'm not an attorney.
I read that too, but I just had thought that.
There you go. There you go. That makes sense. All right. So as far as forms go, that's all we got. I just kind of leave you guys. I don't know if anybody has any questions with just, it's going to be kind of up in the air, but it's not going to be that big of a deal. We're all going to work through it. And I think we're all going to end up a year from now. A year from now is all going to be like the whole Dodd-Frank thing was. Remember we all freaked out about that? So.
Next one, we'll just get a role playing.
Yeah, we will.
And you'll be patient.
All right. Has anybody else got any questions? Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
My conversation.